number 8 Oregon at number 13 Utah, 3:30 p.m. on Fox. And the big storyline, honestly, can Utah ruin the playoff dreams of another Pac-12 contender? Last week, obviously, took down USC. Second year in a row, Utah ruined USC's playoff hopes. Fourth time in a row, Utah's beaten USC. Now they got to play Oregon this Saturday, and the game is at Utah. Utah right now has an 18-game home winning streak. That dates back to the COVID 2020 season. So 2021, 2022, and this year, obviously, they have not lost a home game. They got a big one against Oregon this Saturday, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Utah to do it again and maybe get to 19 games, but it has been unbelievable what Utah's been able to do at home this year, Dalton.
Absolutely, in the last few years. And Utah, they're kind of defying everything PFF is about, right? That you go out and you play well, and then you win games. And to be honest with you, a ton of the metrics say Utah is like an average team. The defense. We talk about their defense and like they do such a good job. And I look at the defensive grading and they're like middle of the pack. They're like 76, right? Offensively, we know they don't throw the ball really, really well, but like they're one of the worst pass protecting teams in the country, right? They are defying a lot of things, and the more I watch the tape and the more I think about what they've accomplished, I start to think we mentioned in our award show that Brent Venables, we picked Venables as the coach of the year. I got to be honest, it's probably Kyle Whittingham at this point, because he doesn't have his starting quarterback. He didn't have his star tight end. I don't know if he does now yet.
No, he's out for the season too. They are now Rising and Keith are both out for the season. So
you came into a season with your two best offensive players done for the year before it even started, and several defensive starters were missing earlier in the year. And yet you're 13th in the country, coming off a win over the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
they're defying some logic right now. I got to be honest with you, and I know that's a tough place to play. And Oregon, look, regardless of what a lot of the metrics say about how much better Oregon should be here, they're the best team in pass protection, they're the best team in run grade. Bo Nix, a top 6 or 7 quarterback, right? He's in the Heisman race. This is going to be a dogfight, because that's all Utah knows is how to get themselves into dogfights.
Yeah, absolutely. The matchup, Dalton, you mentioned it, is the only way I think Utah can win this game is if making it as ugly as possible, making it as low scoring as possible, because you mentioned it. Utah's offense, man, and look at the passing game. They're among the 20 worst teams in the country in passing grade, receiving grade, and pass blocking grade. You look at that pass blocking grade right there. They're 133 FBS teams. They are the second worst team in the country in terms of pass protection. The receiving core has not been good at all without Brant Keithy. Passing grade has not been good at all, obviously without Cam Rising. They've really struggled. And yes, they have put up 34 points. And yes, Bryson Barnes did kind of outduel Caleb Williams, the pig farmer, as Kyle Whittingham put it, outdueled the Heisman Trophy winner. But I think that was more of an indictment on USC's defense than it was anything else. And Oregon's got a very well-coached defense. Utah, the same way. Utah's defense has an uphill battle with this Oregon offense, who can throw the ball as well as almost anyone. They can run the ball as well as anyone. They protect Bo Nix as better than anyone. It's going to be an uphill battle for Utah's defense, but I think ultimately, Dalton, if Utah wants to ruin Oregon's playoff chances and honestly keep Utah's playoff chances alive, I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten Utah only has one loss. They can absolutely, I know, we're not talking about them as a legit playoff contender. They are absolutely still in this playoff race. I think if Utah wants to keep their playoff hopes alive and kill Oregon's playoff hopes, this game has to be as ugly and low scoring as possible for the Utes to have a chance, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something we forget. We talk about the top 6 and 7 teams a lot, and there's some teams floating around in the top 20 with one loss. I think about Alabama. I think about Utah. I think the only exception might be North Carolina, because that was a really bad loss last week to Virginia. You can't lose to a team like that. They might be the one exception. But, if you're at this point in the year and you have 1 or 0 losses, you're in it. Utah runs the table. They're absolutely in it. They already beat USC. They run the table. They beat Oregon. They beat Washington. They beat another good team along the way. Utah's got they beat UCLA decisively. That's a big time win, I think. They're absolutely in it. They're taking this, Kyle Whittingham and them, they're taking this 1 week at a time, and that's the best way they can do it. The biggest thing I see with Utah lately. Okay, so before the last two games, they really were like winning in spite of their offense. And I know they're still winning in spite of the passing game, but they've gotten the run game going the last 2 weeks. Big time. Big time. They've Sione Vaki, all right? He's a converted safety. All right, now he's playing tailback. Over the last 2 weeks, a 95.2 overall grade at a running back position. I don't know if he played it in high school or in the past. I don't know the entire backstory to that. I just know he's a converted safety who's got, over the last two games, 30 touches for 370 yards, which is crazy. They have figured out a formula. Look, the goal for Utah, until it's not big plays, it's not getting vertical like these teams. Just get first downs.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, Vaki's got real speed. And the combination of him and Jaquindon Jackson and Bryson Barnes running the ball, what you're seeing is any of these three guys, if they find that crease and they get their shoulders north and south, especially Vaki, he's got just long speed like crazy. I don't know how they figured this out to put him now at running back, but these three guys, when they get their shoulders north and south, can cause a lot of problems in the run game. And Vaki's a lot of fun to watch, too, because they get in a lot of wildcat. They line him up at quarterback, right? And they just run power. Everybody knows what's coming, and they just dare teams to stop it. So they have found something here in the run game that now can keep them in these games with elite teams like USC. You mentioned, we already know USC's defense is sieve, and they ran, I believe, for almost 250 yards on USC. This is the key, right?
Yep.
Which I kind of said it with Bama and Tennessee last week. Which team in this game has more rushing yards? Right now, what Utah is right this minute is an elite running team. They were not that their first 5 games. Oregon, we already know, is arguably the best running team in the country. Now, can Utah's defense respond? Because you want to make it ugly, but they don't make it ugly in in an Iowa sense, where they're going to be real physical and not really. If you look at their run defense grades, I mentioned how bad Kansas has been since week 5 in run defense. The only Power 5 team in that stretch worse than them is Utah. Last week, I'll be honest with you, watching the tape, if USC had just chosen to keep running the ball, they probably would have won the game. They went a stretch from the beginning of the second quarter to 6:30 in the fourth quarter where they called 3 run plays. That USC ran the ball 3 times in a span of almost 40 minutes. And to be honest with you, Marshawn Lloyd was going for almost 10 yards a carry.
Yep.
They could have just ran it right down the pipe. So they're going to have an issue. Utah has problems stopping the run between the tackles. Very similar to Kansas, actually. Right? Second worst team in the country stopping the run between the tackles. Oregon is the best team in the country running between the tackles. It's a very similar dynamic to the first game we talked about. Oregon wants to go reasonably fast, foundation of their offense. They don't do a ton of complicated stuff. They're really good at what they do. So I think this is another one where the team with more rushing yards is going to win this game. Neither team wants to drop back really and throw the ball. And I know Bo Nix is really good. But they still ideally don't want to just get in a drop-back game, especially throwing into Utah's secondary is not what you want to do, especially in Utah. We've talked about this. Don't go down 7-0 on the first play. Don't screw around. If I'm Oregon, I look at that USC tape and I go, wow, they should have just ran the ball the whole game. They just take the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands for once and you would have won it, right? And they want Williams to press and Lincoln Riley. I don't know if it's an ego thing or what over there, but They just want Caleb Williams to win them ball games, and that's one where they didn't need him to, right? So I think this is an interesting game up front in the run game to see. I think the team with more rushing yards in this game wins the ball game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a great point that you made. That Utah, man, Sione Vaki. We mentioned our midseason awards a couple of weeks ago about how Travis Hunter should be still the favorite for Paul Hornung Award. Sione Vaki is making a case, man, with how good he's been going from safety to running back, and then also Kyle Whittingham. They don't really recruit that many running backs. Their running backs are just converted from other positions because Jaquindon Jackson was a 4-star quarterback going into Utah. They converted him to running back. He's been a great running back for them. Sione Vaki, like you mentioned, safety to running back. So Utah's just done a really good job of maybe not really recruiting running backs coming out of high school, just recruiting other positions and transitioning them to running backs. So it's been very, very impressive. But ultimately, Dalton, who do you think is coming out on top, and who do you think keeps their college football playoff hopes alive?
It's actually funny you mentioned Jackson with the conversion, too, because I think about another converted quarterback who's in the league now, Roschon Johnson. He kind of runs pretty similar to him.
Does,
between the tackles,
bigger,
a little bit
taller
angry.
backs, yeah.
I kind of get Roschon Johnson vibes. The same thing, converted quarterback. Now he's in the NFL, obviously, with the Bears and all that. He was, Bijan Robinson's running mate, all that stuff. But kind of similar players. This is a hard one.
Yep.
This is a hard one because of the environment in Utah at home, and they continue to defy the odds. They just, everything tells you. Even last week, I had a hard time picking him with USC last week, and I ended up picking him just for our Utah faithful that we have on this show. But this is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Oregon still.
Yeah.
I think what Oregon wants to do, and watching what USC, I mean, they only ran the ball like 15 times. It should have been a lot more. Watching what USC and what several other teams have done to them, like I think about even the Oregon State game, right? How they kind of ran on Utah, kind of had will. I think in past years, you didn't want to get physical with Utah, especially when they had guys like Devin Lloyd and guys like that in the front seven. The front seven's a little more finesse this year. And I think if Oregon, kind of similar to Oklahoma, they can really get to the foundation of their offense. It's a similar vibe where run it between the tackles, run it with Bucky Irving, Jordan James. You can roll out nicks here and there. But I think Oregon should really stick to their game, because we've seen the one mistake that teams make going into Utah is kind of screwing around early. Don't spot them. UCLA dropping back, throwing the ball. Florida making a big coverage mistake early in the game. You don't want to fall behind. I don't think Oregon wants to fall behind anyway. Take the ball, run your bread and butter, run it down the pipe, and challenge Utah, especially between the tackles, to be more physical. But I'm going to take Oregon. This is still going to be a war. I'm going to take them 31-27. Utah defies all the odds, but I think they're going to come up a little short of getting over this mountain. I still think Oregon's really, really good.
Yeah, we mentioned a lot how teams usually the winner of most college football games is the team that has more opportunities to win the game, in terms of like, okay, Oregon can win the game through Bo Nix, Oregon can win the game through their running attack. I think Utah really is just slow down Oregon's offense and run the football. And I that scares me when picking Utah in this game, even though it's at home, even though they have the 18-game home winning streak. I'm picking Oregon too. I got 28-21. I think Utah offensively is going to struggle to score in this one. I think Oregon's defense is a lot better than USC's defense. You see what happened in the Colorado game, and that you compare that to USC's defense. Oregon allowed 6 points in that game. USC allowed 30+ in that game and almost lost the game for the Trojans. That kind of shows just the biggest difference you have. And Dan Lanning obviously coaching the defense. Big difference between Dan Lanning and Alex Grinch. I'll just put it that way. So I think Oregon will come out on top 28-21. They do just enough to stay alive in the college football playoff race. But Utah, man, I mean, listen, the fact that they're still number 13 in the country without all those players, without Cam Rising, without Brant Kuithe, that says a lot about this coaching staff right now and how good this coaching staff is with a pig farmer at quarterback, like Kyle Whittingham says. So I got Oregon in this game, but I do think it'll be close, man, and I don't know. Ultimately, I could very well see Utah winning this game and Utah fans getting on our comment section and clowning us once again for not picking the Utes. But this is one I can't pick against Oregon right now. I think this still might be the best team in the Pac-12, even though they lost to Washington. I still think Oregon is going to come out on top and keep their playoff hopes alive.